Airways has apologised to the Minister of State-Owned Enterprises following revelations it spent almost $11,500 on a farewell book instead of a card for outgoing Chief Executive Ed Sims. The invoice obtained by Checkpoint shows the state-owned air traffic controller commissioned Christchurch creative agency Harvey Cameron to produce one photo book at a cost of $11,471.25. Following an inquiry by Checkpoint this afternoon, Interim Chief Executive Pauline Lamb said the company had taken full responsibility for what had happened and she's launched an immediate review of processes. In the last few minutes, the company says it has also apologised to the Minister of State-Owned Enterprises, Todd McClay, who told Checkpoint the spending was excessive and unacceptable. Zach Fleming with this exclusive report.
Airways refused to show Checkpoint a photo of Ed Sims' book, but a copy of the invoice obtained by this program shows it spent $11,471.25 on it. Christchurch creative agency Harvey Cameron was commissioned to design the photo book and print one sample and one final copy to mark Mr Sims' departure as CEO in May after 6 years in the job. The detailed invoice explains the cost includes concept development, design and art direction, the photoshopping and cutting of images, the supervision of its production, and its dispatch to Wellington by May the 23rd. Cost $11,471.25. But we should point out that included the cost of a courier. And while the invoice was paid in full last month, it wasn't until this afternoon, when contacted by Checkpoint, that Airways interim CEO Pauline Lamb labelled the cost of the book exceptional and announced an immediate review. Ms Lamb says prior to receiving Checkpoint's inquiry, Airways had disputed the invoice. Both Airways and Harvey Cameron refused to front for interviews today, so we asked the public what they think.
I don't think it's right.
Not great.
I don't really care, to be honest.
You said spending $11,000 on a farewell card.
Farewell book, but yeah.
I feel like it's a little bit of an overkill, probably not necessary, and there's probably better causes it could be going towards.
It's probably reasonable. It probably does a fairly well good job.
That's an extravagance. That's just not warranted.
Goodness me, I can't believe what you're saying. That's outrageous.
A statement from Airways interim CEO Pauline Lamb blamed the exceptional cost on errors in judgment. She says no senior management were aware of the costs before the invoice was received. But experts Checkpoint spoke to today said they'd be surprised if they weren't aware. David Tweed is an associate professor at Massey University's School of Management.
The board, in terms of its monitoring of the financial situation, I would be surprised if they were not aware. If it came from as a gesture from the management team, then I think the board would certainly expect to be aware of that.
But is there a precedent? Tourism New Zealand bosses were left red-faced in 2009 after a Dick Frizzell painting was purchased as a farewell gift for outgoing CEO George Hickton. The painting, believed to have cost just fractionally less at around $10,000, was approved by the board, but was blasted by then Prime Minister Sir John Key as being an excessive expenditure of taxpayer money. The board members were later asked to dig into their own pockets to pay for the painting. Sir John said in a statement at the time, "The government is firm that it does not want a culture of extravagance in government departments and Crown entities." And if we go back to Airways, in its own statement of intent for this financial year, it said its key goals were to, quote, be as profitable and efficient as comparable businesses and exhibit a sense of social responsibility. Professor Tweed says in the overall scheme of things, $11,000 is pennies for Airways, and in some ways it could be considered a good spend.
The question around this book is it an investment? And I suppose the thing that you could say is, well, if the CEO's departed and is unlikely to return, perhaps that money could have been saved. But I think that takes a very transactional view of life, and you just don't know. That CEO might return and think well of Airways Corporation and be interested in working there again if the opportunity came up, because not only did they get a salary, but they also departed with a sense of value.
Checkpoint asked Airways if the book was also Mr Sims' farewell present and if there was also a function to mark his departure. But Airways said it would take time to compile those costs. Interim CEO Pauline Lamb said in her statement there was a desire to give Ed Sims a good send-off, which, in terms of the book, was not handled as well as it should have been. We went to design studios to ask if charging $11,000 for a farewell book is unusual. Carl Burke is the owner of Sanders Design in Auckland. Within reason, Sanders does them free as a courtesy to its clients.
If it's been a client that we've known for a number of years, and they have put work through us consistently, then it just seems a courtesy for us to help them out in that sort of situation without charging anything or too much.
Before his 6 years at Airways, Mr Sims spent more than a decade in various high-level positions at Air New Zealand. He left Airways to become Executive Vice President for WestJet in Canada, but wasn't able to be reached for comment today. The Minister for State-Owned Enterprises, Todd McClay, says $11,471 on a farewell book is excessive and unacceptable. He's issued Airways with a please explain and, quote, expects them to sort it out and apologise. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
And in the past few minutes, Airways has sent us another statement. It says the total cost for events associated with Ed Sims' farewell was $3,317.74, which related to catering costs for farewell morning teas and events for around 260 of its staff and board. It says there was also a gift for $439 and a book that was produced by its former design agency, which, as we mentioned, was $11,471.25. Airways says it is reviewing its processes and ensuring all staff are aware of their responsibilities, and says it has apologised to the Minister of State-Owned Enterprises, Todd McClay, and will be providing him with the outcome of their review.